I'm demonstrating today how to work Bavarian twisted stitch patterns, also called Austrian or traveling twisted stitches. Here's an example of a motif. See, the background is purl stitches, like if you were doing Aran cables, and the pattern is worked with knit stitches that travel across the background and cross over each other. If you can see closely, each of these knit stitches, the legs are crossed at the base. It's not an open knit stitch, but it's a twisted knit stitch. That's why we call it twisted stitch knitting, because we're twisting every knit stitch. There are many ways to do the crossing of stitches, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate for you. First, we'll use a cable needle. Then in other parts of the video, I'll show 4 different ways to work these without a cable needle. I'll use some larger yarn here so that it will be easier to see. Just work the border here. When you're working a twisted stitch, it can go straight like this column here. What you do is knit into the back of that stitch, and that will cross the legs of the stitch. So instead of being a regular knit stitch like this, where the legs are separate from each other, when you knit in the back, the legs cross over. This will stand out from the background more. Okay, let me work over to where I have some traveling stitches. First, I'm going to talk about stitches that travel. Oops, I've got a mistake there. Anyway, these stitches are traveling to the left. So these are left traveling stitches, also called a left twist. But that term is also used to describe things where you don't have a twisted stitch, so I try and call them traveling stitches. Okay, I've fixed that one that got purled by accident. Anyway, this is going to cross over in front of this purl stitch. That's the idea. So if you're using a cable needle, you'll work this like a cable to front. You'll put this stitch onto your cable needle and hold it to the front. Work the background stitch in the purl. Put this knit stitch back onto the left needle and knit into the back of it. So now these 2 stitches have been worked out of order, and the stitch that had been here is now over there, and vice versa. Let me move over to the next one, which I also, let me do this. Let me fix that one. Okay. Let me do it again. So I've got a knit stitch here. I put it onto a cable needle, hold it to the front, or just let it drop to the front. I work the background stitch, which is a purl. Return the knit to the needle. You can work it right off the cable needle, but you need to slide it to the end. I just put it back onto my regular knitting needle. Okay. You can also have a stitch traveling to the left that's going to cross over another knit stitch. That's what we have here. And that's called a left cross. But it's worked pretty much the same way. This first stitch needs to go 1 stitch over to the left, so we want to hold it out of the way to the front so that this stitch will be the one that comes on top. Now this stitch is going to be in the back, but it's a knit stitch, so I'm going to knit it into the back to twist it, then take this stitch crossing over the front, put it back onto the needle, and knit it through the back. The knits are always worked through the back. So now here we have knits traveling over purls to the left. Here we have a knit crossing over another knit stitch, but the stitch on top is leaning to the left, so that's why it's called a left cross. And with a cable needle, you're holding these stitches to the front. Now let me show you, using a cable needle, how to make them travel to the right. Here are some knit stitches traveling to the right, and I want the knits always crossing over in front of the purls. This is the purl that's going to get crossed over, and this is the knit. So if you're reading a chart or something, this stitch would be marked as right traveling or right twist. But you have to start here because this is the stitch it's going to cross over. This is worked like a cable to back. Put the purl stitch on a cable needle and hold it to the back. Get the working yarn around it so that stitch is out of the way. The knit stitch always is the one you want to end up on top or in the front. So a background stitch goes to the back. Knit this one through the back of the stitch, through the back leg to make it twisted. Now return this stitch to the left needle. Keep the working yarn out of the way. This is a purl, so I purl it. There you've got a right traveling knit stitch. Let me move over to the next one. Here's another pair, a knit and a purl, where I want the knit to cross over the purl to make a right travel. Get the working yarn out of the way. Put the purl stitch onto the cable needle, hold it to the back. Here's the knit stitch that I want to go in the front. Knit it through the back leg, the trailing leg, so that the legs twist. Get that out of the way again. Put the purl back onto the left needle and purl it. There, another stitch pair that have crossed over each other, the purl going to the back, the knit going to the front, traveling to the right. Okay, that's how to work them with a cable needle. I'll finish this row and come back and show you a method that does not use a third needle.